Okay, so let's take a look at language, part 4. If your languages confuse your intellect, if not your whole character, will almost certainly respond. So today we're going to look at some linguist theories of language. And the two linguists that I'm going to talk about are Sapir and Worf. Okay? So according to the hypothesis that they designed, language actually determines our experience of reality. So we're going to go a little philosophical here. What we see and what we think is what our language allows us to see and think. Okay? So for example, and again, this is just a hypothesis, the Inuit famously have many different words for snow, allowing them to discriminate between different varieties of snow. So as a result, their experience of snow is completely different than our experience of snow. So the language itself, according to this hypothesis, is shaping their reality. So Edward Sapir, who was a linguist from 1884, well, that wasn't when he started, but he died in 1939. Here's a quote from him. "The real world is to a large extent unconsciously built upon the language habits of the group. No two languages are ever sufficiently similar to be considered as representing the same social reality. The worlds in which different societies live are distinct worlds, not merely the same world with different labels attached. We see and hear and otherwise experience very largely as we do because the language habits of our community predispose certain choices of interpretation." So Sapir was the first one to kind of come up with the hypothesis that language shapes reality. Okay? Now, Benjamin Worf, another linguist around the same time, studied the difference between, for example, the language of the Hopi Indians of North America and European languages. And he came to a conclusion that the Hopi language contains no words, no grammatical forms, no constructions, no linguistic expressions that refer to what we would call time, or to the past, or to the present, or to the future. They have no words for time in the Hopi language. Worf concluded that since they don't have words for time, they have no concept of time. So again, what Worf is saying is that because it's not within their language, it's not part of their reality. So what this could be summarized as is linguistic determination, that language determines your view of reality. Okay, so I'm going to give you another little example. For anyone read George Orwell's 1984? Okay, good, a few of you have. Okay, I actually prefer his other novel, Animal Farm, but in 1984 they come up with, there's a government that's trying to control the people, right? And they create a language called Newspeak. Okay, the language is called Newspeak. And the purpose of Newspeak was to provide a medium for their new world view, okay, and to affect the mental habits of the people who were within the society, okay? So this was done by, they would invent new words and would eliminate old words that they thought were undesirable, okay? And they would also take words and strip them of some meaning. Okay, especially meanings that they didn't want. So here's an example. The word free would still exist within the language Newspeak, but it could only be used in sentences like the dog is free from lice or this field is free from weeds. It could not be used in the old speak to say politically free or intellectually free. They stripped the word of that meaning. So in that language, 1984, they were actually forcing people to use a language that they designed so that they could control the people. Now this is fiction, this is a piece of fiction, but it kind of speaks to the idea that we could use language to directly influence reality. So it kind of builds off of the SapirWhorf hypothesis to say that language is really, really important for what we claim we know. Thought is merely expressed in words, is not merely expressed in words, it comes into existence through them. So this is, again, part of that same sort of concept, that words bring things into reality. Okay, so let's put the hypothesis to the test. So It has been tested, obviously, several times. So, for example, an anthropologist named Peter Farb, he looked at Japanese women who had married American servicemen during the World War II. So these were Japanese women living in the United States, born in Japan, but were married to American servicemen. The women would often get together, all these Japanese women. At home, they would speak English, and in everyday situations out shopping and interacting with the American public, they would speak English. But when they got together as a group of Japanese women, they would speak in Japanese. Okay? According to the hypothesis, they would be thinking differently when they were getting together in the different groups, that their reality itself would be different based on the language. If the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis holds up and their reality would change based on the language, then we should see this. So what they did is they had a bilingual translator ask them questions in English and in Japanese when they were in different group settings, and to see their attitudes about certain things, to see if they were in fact different. Like, were the women different about their attitudes when they were speaking one language versus another language? According to the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis, this should hold up. And it did kind of hold up. The interviewer asked them the question, when my wishes conflict with my family's wishes, I will. And the women answered, when they were at home speaking in English, they'd say, I do what I want. But when they were with their Japanese group of other women, they would say, it is a time of great unhappiness. This would almost kind of present evidence that the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis has some merit in that these women would have a different view of their reality based on the language they were actually speaking. Okay? Now, this is not proof of the hypothesis. It's evidence for the hypothesis. And some would criticize the hypothesis. Okay? They would say that, well, language does not determine reality. Reality determines language. Okay? Counter theories say, well, the Inuit, of course they have different words for snow, because snow is much more of a reality to Inuit people than it is for, say, people who live in Texas. So the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis says that language determines thought, but experiments also show that thought can occur without language, that language isn't necessary for that to happen. And that also would suggest that maybe language influences thought rather than determining thought. So it is a controversial theory, but it is something to at least think about, that this could happen. A baby might have a concept of numbers before it can talk. A baby can understand, I've got 2 toys, right, rather than 1 toy. But it's hard to see that someone could actually understand multiplication without learning a little bit of language vocabulary around the mathematics to get there, okay? Sometimes, to come up with a new way of thinking, maybe we need to create new language. The new language might actually be a way to create new ways of thinking, and therefore maybe new language is the hallmark of genius. Maybe it's through the creation of new language that we could actually create new realities. So think about that for a second, because one of the activities I had you guys do was to create new words. So maybe you demonstrated your genius to me through that activity by creating those new words. Okay? So I mean, think about it. When you think of people who are geniuses, right? Who are creative, who are innovative, are they creating new vocabularies? Are they creating new ways of thinking? And is the only way we can measure new ways of thinking through new vocabulary? Something to think about. Okay? At least it kind of outlines the importance of new language as a way of measuring development. Man is the animal that speaks. Understanding language is thus the key to understanding man. Okay, in the grade 12 course, ethics is a unit into itself. We discuss a lot of sort of theories of ethics and things like that. Now, I'm not here to be someone to tell you what to think, okay? You can have your own ethics. That's not what the course is about. But it's about examining what does ethics even mean in that larger context. But let's today take a look at how this language and value is going to connect to each other. Well, language can not only describe things, but they can also persuade people. I mean, advertisers have been aware of that for a long time. Marketers who would put out a product called sparkling water would probably do better than someone who puts out a product called gassy water, right? Did you know that the front of the airlines used to be called first class? And as a matter of fact, maybe some of you still use those words, maybe through your parents, but the airlines don't use those words anymore. They don't call it first class anymore. They'll call it things like business class and then economy class, okay? Because the advertisers found that those words were not liked by their consumers. That first class implied that there was a second class and that people felt like they were second class when they were riding there and they didn't like the airline as much. So they found by just changing the wording in the way they described the airlines, it would affect the way the consumers viewed the airline. So advertisers think about this stuff all the time. What language should I use to describe my product and create a brand with it, okay? Even though the actual reality may not be changing, our perception of the reality might be changing based on the language that's used. So let's consider 4 ways that this might influence us, okay? First would be emotionally laden language, right? We know that this exists. We know that language, some language has very positive connotations with it, okay? And some words have very negative connotations with it, right? Hero, peace, democracy. Those tend to have positive connotations, whereas thief, liar, pervert have negative connotations with them. What about euphemisms, right? Sometimes we just switch the wording around so that, you know, we could say things like, I need to go to the restroom, right? Instead of saying, I need to go use the toilet in the toilet room, right? Like we tend to use euphemisms to kind of soften the topics. We talked about this last time, about how we say people passed away rather than they died, right? It's sometimes those euphemisms have specific emotional connotations with them. Now, this is also done deliberately for other reasons. For example, lumber companies use the words clear cutting, okay? Before, and now they use the words landscape management rather than clear cutting to hide the reality. They don't use the word clear cutting as much as landscape management, because clear cutting, you draw the image of them cutting down the trees, okay? Now, here's another example. When the government, they asked people, should the government give more money for welfare? And 24% responded yes in a poll. Yes, the government should give more money for welfare. But when the wording was changed to, should the government give more language to assist the poor, the numbers went up to 68%. All based on just the language that was used. Again, you think about things like national defense or military funding. Which words do you think you're going to present when you are trying to get or influence the people that you're trying to influence? People who create polls and surveys spend a lot of time carefully picking and changing the language to often get the results that they want. I mean, the difference between 68% and 24% is definitely significant. To just make that little change in the language to create that big of a difference makes it beneficial, depending on which way you want to go. If you don't want that funding, then you're probably going to use that word, welfare. But if you do, you're going to go the other way. Second one, weasel words. Obviously, these are words to weasel out of things or to escape, okay? Manufacturers often use words like this in their instructions so that you can't tie them down later to say, well, they can say, well, that's not what I said. I said something different there. You may recall I showed you some of those videos last time. It depends on what the meaning of the word is, right? Like words that you can weasel out of by just keeping them intentionally vague. The third way is grammar. Well, here's 2 sentences to examine. Many villages were bombed. We bombed many villages. Now, the first sentence sounds like you were just an observer to these bombings occurring. Almost like they were a natural event that all of a sudden just bombs fell out of the sky. But in the second one, the second sentence, you are taking responsibility for the action of bombing. We bombed implies that you are responsible for that bombing. And so when you choose your language of these two sentences, depending on who you're trying to influence in the audience that you're speaking to, you could use the grammar of the sentence to cover up something that you may not want necessarily to be out there. And I know you guys know this stuff because you probably do this kind of grammatical, weaselly sort of wording sometimes to reveal information or conceal information depending on the audience that you're speaking to. The fourth thing to look at is this idea of revealing and concealing, okay? So here's 4 descriptions. I have invited an attractive blonde to the party. I have invited a cellist to the party. I have invited a marathon runner to the party. And I have invited a liberal to the party. They're all the same person. But if I was describing who I was inviting to this party I was having to my wife, which sentence do you think I might not choose? Probably the first one. Okay, I think that she might feel there's a connotation there in the way I'm describing this person to her that she may not like. So I will intentionally conceal that. Okay? Maybe my wife, she's not, but maybe my wife is an incredible conservative person. So I might also conceal the last sentence. I might not reveal that to her. Okay? Maybe my wife is a big musician. So I might, in fact, reveal the second sentence to her because that will sort of strengthen the message I'm trying to get across here. And you guys know this. You know that you can specifically detail information to people or reveal or conceal depending on how you want to influence them through your language. Your language can intentionally hide or show things that you want them to, and you're good at it. You're good at constructing sentences that do this, okay? We choose to affect the way people will see this person coming to the party because we can construct the language that we want to present the image that we want to present to them. Okay, as imagination bodies forth the forms of things unknown, the poet's pen turns them to shapes and gives them airy nothing, a local habitation and a name. Shakespeare's always hard to read, right? Why does he talk like that? Okay, so we'll wrap up today by looking at sort of this in a larger sort of social setting. Language, war, and power. How will this kind of come together? Well, the fact that language can be used to manipulate people is never more apparent than in times of war, okay? The military often uses language to dehumanize people. Okay, for example, in the Vietnam War, the word gooks was used to describe Vietnamese people. And in the first Gulf War, the pilots would use the words turkey shoot. They were not shooting turkeys from their planes. They were shooting people. Now, the reason that these words are used is to not make the targets, the enemy, seem human. It dehumanizes them. So it makes the job of these military personnel easier to not realize what they're actually doing is killing people, okay? Instead, they're just killing gooks and they're killing turkeys, okay? It is using language to intentionally psychologically affect the people in those positions as soldiers, okay? This is done on purpose by the language that's being constructed here. So war tends to reveal this about our language, that we have this power of influence. Here's some more words that come out in the times of war. Security assistance could really mean arms sales. Neutralize could really mean to kill. He's no longer a factor. Oh, that's because he's dead, right? I want to take him out. Again, in military speak, that doesn't mean, you're going out, and having a cheeseburger together. It means you're destroying him, right? Pacification could mean bombing and killing people, right? Service a target. This doesn't mean you're going and changing the oil. You are dropping bombs on that target, right? Collateral damage. This is my favorite one in here, how bad this one is. Friendly fire. Hello, I'm here, this is the friendly fire. No, friendly fire means you have accidentally, most likely fired on, if not killed, one of your own troops, okay? Strategic redeployment, retreat, etc. ethnic cleansing is essentially genocide. It is through war that we often see that we have that power in our language to try to influence people, and it's never more glaringly seen as, I think, in war times, where you see how language is affecting, quote, what you know by intentionally influencing things, okay? When you hear the words friendly fire, okay, or take out, you might be drawing in your mind a completely different picture than the intention of that language. So when we say language is power, there is a lot of truth to that statement, okay? So as a way of knowing, okay, we've kind of dissected language and some of the faults of language and some of the power of language and things like that. We know that it's not just a simple thing, that we just slap a label on an object and that describes it, okay? That there's a lot more to language than that, okay? And it's very difficult to precisely pin down the way language comes out. Okay, and that's the unit. All right. So, stop.